Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. Last night we had three provincial by-elections take place in Alberta, and today I want to break down for you guys what I think they indicate about the current political landscape in Alberta and what they also don't indicate, because I think there are a lot of negative things proven in these by-elections, specifically around the separatist movement and its actual political power. But first, I want to start off in Edmonton. Two out of the three by-election ridings were in Edmonton. That would be Edmonton-Ellerslie and Edmonton-Strathcona. Let's start in Edmonton-Strathcona because it's not very exciting. Naheed Nenshi easily was elected as the new MLA for Edmonton-Strathcona. That's all that is to be said because it is one of the most firm NDP ridings in the entire province, if not the most NDP riding in the entire province. Even back in the day when the Alberta NDP would only win two seats in an election, one of them would be Edmonton Strathcona. So again, nothing ever changes. And speaking of nothing ever changing, Edmonton Ellerslie was a riding I genuinely thought the UCP had a chance of winning. Did it tighten up compared to the 2023 provincial election result? Yeah, but it's still such a margin between the NDP and the UCP. It almost didn't matter. The UCP obviously invested a lot of resources into the riding, and so I think the improvement really just demonstrates that it's a by-election, and by-elections have slightly different results than a normal general election. Usually in Edmonton Ellerslie, the NDP would be able to get 61%. That's what they got last time. And I think it's what they also got in 2019. This election, they got 50%. UCP got like 36, 37%. Republican Party of Alberta got like 3.5. Liberal Party got like 1.5 or 2. It wasn't really much of a result that would tell us anything. Basically, Naheed Nenshi and the NDP probably still own Edmonton. Yeah, now we probably need to see a by-election take place somewhere like Calgary to get a real reading on if anything has changed in a swing part of the province. The general story about Alberta is that the UCP or whatever the Conservative Party is owns the rural area and the NDP owns Edmonton, and then Calgary is a battleground. Yeah, I guess Edmonton has become a little less NDP, but that still means they're winning the entire city. But now, without further ado, let's get into the stuff that's actually interesting, and that is Olds-Didsbury-Three Hills. This is a rural riding, and although I just said the rural ridings are basically owned by the Conservative Party, as has been alluded to in the previous riding, there was another party that's not usually on the political landscape that ended up running in this provincial by-election, and that is the Republican Party of Alberta. It ran in all three by-elections, but outside of Olds-Didsbury-Three Hills, they didn't really have good results. They had 3.4% in Ellerslie. Strathcona, they literally had 0.7%. I don't really blame them. It's not like they were going to win that one or even put in a great showing, because even the Conservatives don't put a good showing in that riding. Literally, Nenshi won it with 81% of the vote, so nobody looked good there. But they put all of their eggs mostly in the basket of Olds-Didsbury-Three Hills, which maybe we will start calling ODTH. And ODTH, how did they do? Well, I would characterize this as disappointing. I'm about to show the data on screen. I just want to remind you guys, especially if you live in Alberta, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not a subscriber, leave a comment on what you think, and actually scroll down and click on my website in the comment section below, wyattclaypool.com, if you want to join my organizing list to be made aware of good Conservative candidates in nomination races federally, provincially, or even leadership races around the country. But here in ODTH were the results. We had the UCP's candidate Tara Sawyer get 9,363 votes, 61.12%. We had the new Democratic candidate get 19.98%, effectively 20%, and the Republican Party candidate, who was also the leader of the party, Cameron Davies, got 17.66%. Now, I consider this to be a big disappointment for the Republican Party. And I'm going to get to some people who disagree with me on this particular issue, saying it was their first run at it. You got to give them some, slack. They tried their best, and that's great. That's a great first election result. The problem for the Republican Party, this isn't some like new concept of a party coming out of nowhere and getting 17%. Everyone's like, whoa, who are these guys? It's not like you had something named like New West Alberta or whatever. And it's not a separatist party, but it's like, some libertarian party. Maybe it's some sort of, working like a trade union type, blue collar conservatives or whatever, and they start doing really well, or it's a rural interest party. That would be a really good result. The problem is that this party is saying that we're going to capture the separatist sentiment and we are going to maybe not ride it into office, but we're going to get close. We're going to maybe come in a close second. We're going to give the UCP a run for their money. We're going to freak them out. I really don't think Danielle Smith is freaked out by the Republican Party today, because to get third place in ODTH is not very good. This is one of the most conservative ridings in the province. And yeah, they ended up taking a bunch of the vote from the UCP. The UCP lost 14 points compared to how they did in 2023, but that still only means the Republicans got 17.66 and came behind the NDP, who barely tried in this area. Like, yeah, they had door knockers and whatnot, because it's not like they're going to send their door knockers up into Edmonton. This is a riding close to Calgary. A bunch of their Calgary people may have come out to try and do a half decent showing, but still, as a party that's saying that because the separatist movement is more than 50% popular in some of these ridings, we should have an easy time connecting with voters. And what we saw is that people who maybe have separatist sympathies are still sticking generally with the UCP. They maybe will vote yes in a separatist referendum or an independence referendum. I know some people don't like the word separatist. It really doesn't matter. Either one of them pretty much means the same thing. I'm not trying to be derogatory, but a lot of people will vote yes on a separatist referendum, but they're not going to risk the government for a separatist MLA who can't do anything. It's not like a separatist MLA can just push forward a piece of legislation saying we're leaving. They would still need to do a petition and then have a referendum vote on the specific thing that they petitioned for. You still have to do it the old-fashioned way. There's no way of taking the government and then having the premier saying, if they're a Republican premier, saying we're leaving. And I think the way that the party ran in this election wasn't good. Why did they pick the color red? I know it's the Republican Party color down south. It's confusing. People look at it and they think it's a Liberal Party sign. I talked about this with Candace Malcolm on her show on Juno News. I'll actually link that in the description below and pinned at the top of the comments as well. I think it was fun discussion, so you guys might like it. But again, it was just the party almost didn't feel like it was attempting to win in many ways. And now I just want to bring up something I was seeing from, or first I'm going to show up a map of the riding, and then I want to go to someone who disagreed with me on this particular issue. Someone I actually respect a lot, but I think I just want to show what their disagreement was, because I think it's a good argument to tackle on this issue. So Calum here, who did a really good job posting this map of the riding, poll by poll, they show the riding results: 61%, 20%, 18%, and Wild Rose had won. I don't even know what the Wild Rose Loyalty Coalition is anymore. It's still Paul Hinman's vehicle. If you guys aren't in Alberta, you won't even know who Paul Hinman is. Not a shot against him, but this is very deep political lore in Alberta now. But in this riding, and naturally they did, but the UCP won 61% of the vote. What I think is concerning for the Republican Party is you think that this party would be at least popular in the super deep rural areas. But not really. Even in some of these deep rural areas, I'm not even sure if these ones are slightly lighter blue, because maybe they have some small towns that are a little bit more NDP-ish. Maybe there's some more people, more retirees who live in those areas. Or I don't know if it's like acreages where people are voting for the Republicans. My point is that for the Republican Party to demonstrate that it has real staying power, I'm not even saying they have to win a riding or come close to the riding. They need to show they can win a county. I can win this general poll area. This poll area are the type of people who will vote for us. Now we can kind of find ridings that are made out of poll areas that are a lot like that one. If you could do that, you could win. But there's no general place where their particular flavor of separatist messaging is popular. And I know the guy who runs the party, Cam Davies. He's a character. I like characters in politics. He's very much an eccentric, outgoing guy. I don't have a personal problem with him in any way, but the way that the party is being too niche about its separatism is kind of a problem. When on your website, and I saw someone post this from the Wayback Machine, at one point they were almost marketing themselves as a sort of quasi independence, quasi 51st state party. You're immediately taking the maybe 50, maybe even 55% of people who support separatism in ODTH and having them now divided because they maybe don't support 51st state stuff, or maybe they don't want a independent Alberta that's going to be anti-monarchy. And I know the monarchy is not super popular in Alberta, but these are all things to consider because you're going to start slowly dividing people out of your potential voting base. All small parties have to contend with this. And I'm not anti-small party. I help out small parties. I currently work for a small party in British Columbia, 1BC. We already have 2 MLAs because they crossed the floor and joined. I like the new Blue Party in Ontario. I don't even care if they don't win, but they need to have a point to existing. And if this party is trying to get Alberta out of Canada, if they can't win an election, that's kind of a problem. And they don't exactly have decades and decades of time to develop this concept of a party. Because if the Conservatives take over federally, things are going to improve and people will lose interest. Separatism has to be like really hot and fast. It needs to be like, you have a firebrand of a leader who can gather people, get them to vote for something, and then go for a referendum vote ASAP. I'm not exactly a pro-independence guy because, frankly, I think a lot of pro-independence stuff comes from a moment of exhaustion where people want to leave. But if they stick around for 4 years, everything might be better and they're happy they didn't leave. So I always think it's such a massive risk for potentially a reward that you may have wanted to hand back later. But yeah, this is a problem. They didn't win a single county. They didn't win a single poll area. And so let's now jump over to somebody who disagrees with me, somebody I respect, and that would be Marty up north. So I made a post about how I thought that this was not a good result. I said that, just bringing this up on screen, I said that I think if they really wanted to prove that they could basically be a real party that had real momentum, they needed 25%. They needed to take a quarter of this riding, win some polling stations, and that's how they're going to prove it. I think they got enough of a vote that their people are probably going to stick with them, but I don't think they're going to grow. So that was my point. And Marty up north said, "You're totally misreading what happened and drawing the wrong conclusions. 15,318 voters turned out for a by-election in a meaningless riding. That's a 42% voter turnout in a by-election, which is unheard of. He is right, that is high for a by-election. Especially considering the fact that everyone is suffering from election fatigue. Why the big turnout? Because Danielle Smith has her marching orders from Ottawa to stop the separatist movement at all costs. The UCP threw a lot of resources in the riding. Now, I don't agree with that. Now, Danielle Smith is not pro-separatist. At the same time, she was the one who lowered the citizens' petition threshold to make it easier to get it on the ballot because previously the petition threshold was absurdly high. It was like over 600,000 signatures you needed within 60 days. She lowered it to around 177, 176,000, which is far more reasonable. And it's a tough lift still. It's not like anyone can just go do that. But Marty goes on to say, so did the NDP. They got as many votes yesterday as they did in the 2023 general election, which means they also mobilized everyone. Just look at the advanced polling numbers and special ballots. The fact that Cam Davies got 17.6% of the vote is remarkable and definitely not a failure. There's absolutely an appetite for a separatist party. Rural Albertans, the real backbone of the province, understand what's happening. And he says, this should be a wake-up call for the Alberta separatist movement. Opposition to a referendum will be fierce, if not unsurmountable. The NDP, the unions, Ottawa, other provinces, immigrants, they're all against us. Now, I'm just going to end it there. But my point about where I think Marty is wrong is to make excuses for the failure. If you're basically saying that your opposition simply mobilizing their voters to show up is always going to beat you, how are you going to win? Are you hoping? You can't win an election hoping that nobody else shows up. You have to win when your opponents are at their best. And it's not like the Republican Party didn't have the lead up time for this election. They had a few months where they were marketing themselves. They knew that they were going to do this for a while. And I think that they did it a little bit too fly by night. They assumed that this was going to be a standard by-election where 20% of people, 15% of people are going to show up, and you're going to make your numbers look really good by getting, 2,000 people out, which would normally only, bank you 15% of the vote in a riding, but it's going to get us 30% if not a lot of people show up. Don't hope for things like that. You got to just win. And this is not at all unfair to say that you should at least come close to win or win. Because guess who guys, do you want an example of a successful version of this? I'm not even having to go very far from this riding. In fact, I'm not going literally anywhere. In 1982, in February 17th, 1982, ooh, sorry, that scrolled up. We literally had Gordon Kessler from the Western Canada Concept Party in a by-election in Olds-Didsbury, back when it was a smaller riding because of, lower populations of the province. Gordon Kessler won 42.20% of the vote. She beat the Social Credit Party, who got 28, the PCs, who got 25, New Democrats, who got 3%. It is doable. You can win. You can absolutely win. You just have to try. And someone could say, well, they only had to turn out 4,000 voters to win. Well, I'm going to remind people that Cameron Davies and the Republicans, in an era with much better technology, with an ability to reach people without even having to go to their homes, got 2,700 people out. Gordon Kessler got 4,000 people out in basically the same area. Is it a wider area? Yeah, but the population is bigger, so in general, your volunteer base should also be bigger. They need to figure out how to win the acreages. They need to figure out how to win a small town. If they're just going to assume that eventually there's going to be this big mass appeal, that there's going to be this big centering moment where everyone's going to come and just vote for them because they get sick of the government, you're wrong. Even Gordon Kessler couldn't hold on to it for very long. He didn't end up running in the general election. Someone else ran in the same riding. He went somewhere else. But this guy, Daryl M. Jadek, got down to only 25%. They lost a lot. And then Gordon Kessler ran in Highwoods, and he got blown out of the water too. I think he came second place, but it was like a really distant second place. There is no replacing winning in electoral politics. And unless the other option is just bad, there is no real reason to run a party if there's no horizon point. There's no victory on the horizon, or there's not even a concept of how we're going to get there. I don't think they know how they're going to get there. There's a reason why in Edmonton, Ellerslie, they only got 3.4%, despite putting up some amount of effort to try and door knock those areas. There's just not much of an appeal, and even where there is an appeal, it's kind of limited. That's the problem. And the thing is, I'm not an independence guy, but if you want a really honest independence voice, Corey Morgan on his personal channel has been doing great work talking about what the separatist movement needs to be if they want to actually win. And he says, stop doing the party stuff, focus on a petition, and focus on voting for independence. Stop trying to create parties where big personalities and egos clash on the concept and who's going to be the leader, because guess what? A movement like this is going to succeed when there's no leader and you're just voting for independence. There's no independence with this guy as the king. There's no independence with this particular vision for how we're going to separate. Just say we're going to separate. That's all the petition should basically say. Don't have all these other distractions around. Especially because, frankly, parties get money involved, and then it becomes, well, who's on the board? Well, who's going to, is the leader getting paid? Well, who's getting the contracts to run the advertising? Problem. Anyways. So that's it for this particular topic, guys. I think this demonstrates, one, the independence movement is just not nearly as popular as people think. Yes, there was a couple polls that showed that it was 45 in favor of independence, only 55% against, which is pretty tight for that particular question. That came up from Leger, I believe. At the same time, you then have Abacus data, which is a better pollster in my opinion, and especially Janet Brown, who is easily the best pollster in Alberta and Saskatchewan. She showed independent support around 35%, 34%. I think there needs to be a lot more marketing on this issue. Again, even if you won an independence referendum, if all the polling showed you only had 30% support and the only reason you win is because of low turnout, they're probably not going to honor that result. So don't hope for low turnout. Don't hope for easy mode in politics. Just win. Basically, just win. Focus on winning. Don't focus on hoping the other guys don't show up. And I think that's what the independence guys got caught with yesterday. They hoped other people didn't show up and their result was going to look better than it actually was. Anyways, so that's it for me today, guys. See you later.